Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Commission of the County of Santa Barbara meeting of February 26th. We begin our agendas by a salute to the flag, if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Villalobos, do you want to proceed with the roll call vote?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the Commission. Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County of Santa Barbara Television, CSP-TV, Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, San Maria, and Orchid areas. Rebroadcast of Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays at 5 p.m. on CSP-TV, Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two, and also streaming on the county's YouTube channel. Shall I move on to roll call?
Please.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cooney?
Here.
Commissioner Park?
Ready.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
And Chair Bradley?
I hear.
And we expect Commissioner Martinez to be joining us in a while.
Thank you. Do we want to go ahead with the agenda status report? Mr. Wilson, Secretary Wilson?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. In regards to the status of our agenda, we have two items on our standard agenda. We have the Mission Isla Vista Partners Housing Development, and then we have the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report. It's my understanding that we will be changing the order of those items this morning, and we'll begin with the Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report, and then the second item will be the Mission Isla Vista Partners Housing Development Project.
Thank you. And I just, for the other commissioners, I wanted to do that so we had Commissioner Martinez here for the full duration of the item in Isla Vista. So with that, do you want to go forward with the projection report?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, looking at the projection report, our next scheduled hearing will be next week, March 5th. It'll be here in Santa Barbara. That is where we continue the appeal of the G&K Cannabis Processing Design Review Project. That's the only item on the agenda, and that's next week here in Santa Barbara. And then moving down the calendar, we will be in Santa Maria on March 12th. And on March 12th, we continue the Sentinel Peak Resources Truck Rack Project. And then we also have the Keysite 2 Ambulatory Surgery Center on that date. And then we had also continued the discussion on the Emergency Shelter Zoning Ordinance for March 12th. Again, that's in Santa Maria. And then further on the calendar is March 26th. We have one item on that date. That's another housing development project, and that's here in Santa Barbara. And then April 2nd, we have one item, which is a tentative map in Santa Barbara. And then April 9th, two items, a Tier 2 winery, switching a Tier 2 to a Tier 3, and then a equestrian facility, and that is in Santa Maria. So April 9th, we're back in Santa Maria. And then when we, there's nothing else projected until we get to May 21st. That's the MPC. So as of, takes us to the projection report. And we will coordinate with staff in regards to March 26th and April 2nd, being that both of those only have one item on it. And so we'll either coordinate with staff on combining those or adding more items to those agendas so that there's not just one item on that.
Which dates were those? March 26th?
Yeah, it's March 26th and April 2nd.
Okay.
March 5th, we've already done noticing, so we got to keep that hearing in play. But giving a gentle reminder to staff to look at March 26th and April 2nd to make sure that we have sufficient items on those.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have any questions? Your light's on. Okay. Let's go to this item on our agenda, which is for public comment. That means that anybody who's in the room that wants to address the commission of items that is not on our published agenda, this is your time to do so. With 3 minutes each, and I'm not having any speaker slips here. Anyone online, Mr. Villalobos?
Madam Chair, no hands. I believe our attendees online are here to speak on the Isla Vista item.
Okay. Okay, well then that brings us to our next item on the agenda, item 7, which is our Planning Commissioner's informational reports. Does anyone on the commission have something they want to share today? Seeing nothing, we'll move on to the approval of minutes of February 5th and then February 12th. Does anybody have any corrections? Commissioner Cooney,
I move approval of both hearings of the 5th and 12th.
very nice.
Second the motion?
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. Okay, that brings us to our director's report. Director Plowman.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I have a short report this morning. We did not have the board hearing last week due to the holiday. And this Tuesday, we had the hearing on Sable. It was probably the most attended hearing I've been at the county.
Wow.
Yeah, and there were, I think, well over 100 speakers that signed up to speak. We did not have all of them speak. I mean, the day just went on quite long, so people had to leave. But I think we had around 90 people speak. And passion on both sides, and passion on both sides of our board. So because Supervisor Hartman recuses herself, we had a 2-2 vote at the board, which essentially is no action. And we are in the process of sort of determining what that actually means in the long run for Sable and the opponents.
Yeah.
So
We heard news reports that both sides thought they won, and I am like, I thought a 2-2 was a denial, but
yeah, counsel.
help.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, so at the Planning Commission, a 2-2 is denial, and that's because the Planning Commission procedures set out that detail. At the board, a 2-2 is no action.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay.
And then the only other thing I have is just the future items that are going to be heard at the board. And that is, we have a HLAC item going to the board on the 4th of March for the Arroyo, designation of the Arroyo Hondo Bridge, a landmark on the Gaviota Coast. And then also on the 4th, it's not our item, but it's an item that affects planning, and that is the inclusionary housing ordinance is getting updated and to align with some of the items that were in our housing element. And that includes rental housing being subject to inclusionary housing requirements.
And that's new?
That
This
is new.
housing element, it used to
That
be
is
for
new. It used
sale
to be for
projects,
sale, right.
Okay.
We didn't see a lot of rental projects. We do see them now, mostly rental projects. It's interesting how the economics of a project change over time. However, we mostly see projects taking advantage of the state density bonus law, which then exempts them from our inclusionary. So, but it is in the event that somebody doesn't take advantage of it, then we have a backup for requirements.
So what is the inclusion? It used to be 20%. Is that, what is it?
No, it's lower. It's, we don't have, I think it's, well, maybe it is 20, I think it's 15% on the South Coast. So it's 2.5 very low, 2.5 low, 5 moderate, and 5 upper moderate. And then in the North County, it's just very low and low.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And it's possible that moderate and upper moderate could come into play in the North County, depending on the home sale prices or rents. Just to, we're flexible. If their rents and sale prices are below that rate, then they don't have that requirement.
Okay.
We have then the cannabis item will be going on the 18th of March to the board. We have the Laguna Blanca appeal going on the 1st of April. The art tours on the 1st of April. And then moving to the 8th of April, we've got the work program for long-range planning. And then we have 2 items that are going, that are relevant to the work that the department does and the things that the commission sees, and that is CSD was tasked with preparing a workforce housing study, and that is going to be going to the board. That's available now, and it talks about county-owned sites that could be developed for workforce housing, and that will be at the board on the 8th of April. And then we are also bringing forward CSD as the lead on this, but it's the pro-housing designation by the state, which will benefit the county for funding and things like that. So I think it's a good thing to have for our community. I think we can bring more money to our affordable housing projects that way. And then lastly, we've been working through our safety element on evacuation traffic modeling. And it's an evacuation study. It's not a plan, it's a study. And we're going to be briefing the board on that on May 6th.
Great.
And that's all I have.
Any questions for our esteemed director? Yes, Commissioner Cooney.
I was just going to invite a comment on the other item on the board agenda, which I didn't get to see live, but read about, and that was just I don't care about the results at all, but it was interesting and I guess contested.
Are we talking about the
Sable.
No, increase in salary
salaries?
for the board members.
Yeah,
Nothing in there about increase in salary for planning commissioners.
Yeah,
there was
Our
not.
stipend has been this way for several decades, I think, yeah. You treat us as well as you can. Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Park?
Yes, this reminds me of something. When you spoke about the different housing things that will be coming in front of the board, especially when you were talking about workforce housing, because that was actually a piece of the rec master plan workshop we did a year and a half ago, talking about workforce housing on properties that qualified for the rec master plan as one of the incentives. So what I'm minded of, and I'm looking at all these LRP people, that's reminding me that when we did the rezones, or looked at the rezones, part of LRP's presentation was about 25 policies that would accompany it, and they were I thought they were very clever, and one of them was workforce housing on all projects, which was sort of a big change. And I'm wondering whatever became of those policies.
Commissioner Park, through the chair, you're referring to the policies in the housing element?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are in the process right now. Those were actually implementation items is what they were, 25 of them. We have 6 policies, and then we have 25.
Right.
But actually, we really, out of those 25 action items, we have 99 implementation items, and we are working on those as we speak.
Okay.
And moving those things forward. So the inclusionary housing ordinance amendment is one of those items. The emergency shelter item that you recently heard is an action item out of the housing element. So we have timelines in those action items that we're required to meet, and that's what we're attempting to do, is just follow the timeframes. But workforce housing is, it was actually county-owned sites was an action item, and we have some requirements that we have to meet with state HCD on identifying when housing will be constructed on those sites.
I thought that one of the policies, or whatever they're called, that were included in that presentation from LRP included allowing employee dwelling units on other than just agricultural properties? Am I just having a wonderful reminiscence and optimistic memory, or was that an actual thing that occurred?
You want to respond? It's Suzanne.
Mr. Tuttle is telling me that there is something in there about that, but I don't recall that one specifically.
Yeah, I think it'll make a big difference, and it goes far beyond our ag employee dwelling unit, and it kind of goes beyond what we're talking about in the rec master plan. So I just wanted to keep my eyes on it. Well, this is good enough. It sounds. Will that kind of stuff come in front of us?
Some of it will, because some of it requires changes to our code. Some of the items, like the one you saw on the emergency shelters. We're working on developing changes to our density bonus program. That's the county density bonus program. That will come before the Planning Commission.
And this one I just mentioned, would that come in front of the Planning Commission?
If we have to make changes to our code, which sounds like we would likely have to do, yes, that would come before you.
Great.
If I could interject real quick, so I'm just looking at it now. So that's Program 6, and the action item was by July 2027, amend the ordinance to allow employee dwellings, all employee dwellings, not just farm worker dwellings. So
Right.
that was one item that we'd come back to you, and currently scheduled for, not for a couple of years, but
I look forward to it. Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no other questions on that report, let's move on to the standard agenda and with our item 2 instead of 1 to begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff is requesting that the County Planning Commission receive and file the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report.
Thank you, and because this is a report, we don't do Brown Act disclosures, correct? Right? This is an administrative item. Okay, so we start off with this beautiful retinue of staff at our table. Who's going to lead us? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner and the Chair. My name is Brianna Alamia, and I'm here with Danielle Moore, and we'll be presenting on the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report. Can you go to the next slide? Oh, is it me? It is me, okay. So the Annual Progress Report, also referred to as the APR, is a state-mandated report that provides information regarding the implementation progress of the county's comprehensive plan and the county's progress in meeting its regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, in 2024. State law requires the county to submit the APR to the Board of Supervisors, Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, and State Department of Housing and Community Development, or State HCD, by April 1st of each year. The county also submits the report to the City of Santa Barbara in accordance with policies in the Mission Canyon Community Plan. County staff made progress preparing comprehensive plan amendments this year, including initiating the circulation element update and open space element update, and continuing work on the environmental justice element and safety element. County staff also completed various ordinance amendments implementing the comprehensive plan. These include the energy element updates, agricultural enterprise ordinance amendments, and various housing bill ordinance amendments. So the 2024 APR reports on the status of the county's housing element program implementation progress as well. The board adopted the 2023 to 2031 housing element update in December of 2023, which contains 25 programs and 99 actions to help meet the housing goals and needs of the unincorporated county. In 2024, the county completed 9 of these actions, initiated work on 21 actions, and will continuously work on 16 ongoing actions. Most notably, the county adopted ordinance amendments and completed the rezone process for the inland area, along with selection of county-owned sites suitable for development to help meet the county's RHNA. The county is currently working on considerations for a density bonus program for moderate-income housing and completing a workforce housing study, amongst other actions. The county will continuously amend zoning ordinances upon the implementation of new state laws and continue to seek funding for low-income communities' housing and services, amongst additional actions. The APR also summarizes the county's progress in meeting its RENA for the 2023 to 2031 housing element period. 2024 marked the second year of the new cycle. RENA progress is determined by the number of building permits that the county issued for new housing units in 2024 added to prior year's totals. This includes permits issued for housing units such as single-family dwellings, multifamily dwellings, accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and agricultural employee dwellings. Previously, state HCD did not include replacement units such as demolition and disaster rebuilds toward the RENA progress, but as of 2022, these units are now included. Group quarters such as dorms are still not included. The county's RENA is divided into 4 income categories: very low income, moderate income, and above moderate income. To determine the affordability level of each unit, particularly those that are not deed restricted, staff follows the affordability methodology shown on this slide. Staff first compiles countywide for-sale prices and monthly rental prices. Staff researches unit prices by zip code, community area, square footage, and number of bedrooms. Based on HCD's assumptions, the size of a household exceeds a household's bedroom count by 1. Next, staff determines what affordability level the new units fall under. The affordability level is determined by comparing the monthly rent or mortgage payment for each unit to the portion of income that households in each income category can afford. Staff uses state HCD's state income limits, which they release annually. From this document, staff uses Santa Barbara County's average median income to calculate the maximum monthly mortgage or rent payment for various household sizes. This maximum monthly payment is equal to the annual income divided by 12 months, which is then multiplied by the percentage of income spent on housing, which is 30% for lower income households and 35% for moderate and above moderate income households. State HCD provides additional assumptions to consider for the affordability analysis, which they provide in a calculator. These for sale and rental assumptions are utilized to determine affordability. In some areas of the county, even small units are not affordable to lower income households. Therefore, the county cannot automatically assume that all ADUs and agricultural employee dwellings are affordable by design. P&D will continue to improve the accuracy of for sale and rental price data sources for tracking and determining the affordability levels of new units, particularly for those that are not deed restricted. So as you may be aware, the unincorporated areas of the county were allocated 5,664 housing units for this new cycle's RENA period. The Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, or SBCAG, divided the county's RENA into 2 subregions, the South Coast and North County. The county must accommodate 74%, or 4,142 units, of its RENA in the South Coast, and 26%, or 1,522 units, of its RENA in the North County. This table shows the number of building permits the county issued for new housing units, organized by income category, within the unincorporated South Coast in 2024. The last row of the table shows the county South Coast RENA for each income category for the planning period. The county issued building permits for 290 new housing units in the South Coast. These building permits include 125 ADUs, 80 single-family dwellings, 11 manufactured homes, 3 agricultural employee dwellings, and multifamily developments totaling 71 units. This graph shows the same information as slide 7, the number of building permits that the county issued for new housing units in the South Coast in 2024, organized by income category. The blue columns show the South Coast total issued building permits, while the orange columns show the South Coast RENA allocation, with the last column showing the combined total. In 2024, the South Coast produced 290 units. As you can see, the county so far is falling short on producing units for every income category for the South Coast allocation. However, it is worth noting that this is only the second year of the new 8-year planning period, and the county has time to continue making progress toward reaching its allocation. With the various efforts the county has taken, including the rezones and various ordinance amendments, streamlining the permit process, we do anticipate seeing an uptick in housing production over the next several years. However, so long as the county continues permitting an insufficient number of units relative to its RENA allocation, It remains subject to SB 423, which will be discussed in a later slide. I will now turn it over to Danielle to discuss the North County RENA progress and complete the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you, Brianna. To continue, this table similarly shows RENA progress for the unincorporated North County. This table shows the number of building permits that the county issued for new housing units organized by income category within unincorporated North County in 2024. As shown in the chart, of the 110 new approved units in 2024, 95 units were in the low or moderate income categories. The last row of the table shows the North County's RENA for each income category. In 2024, the county issued building permits for 110 new housing units in the North County. These building permits consisted of 94 ADUs, 12 single-family dwellings, 3 manufactured homes, and 1 agricultural employee dwelling. As shown in the graph, the North County is on track with above moderate income and low income unit production. However, the North County is falling short on its very low income and moderate income unit production. Now, I will discuss the implications of not meeting the county's RENA. As a refresher, Senate Bill 423, previously known as SB 35, establishes a mandatory, streamlined, ministerial approval process for qualifying housing developments. SB 423 only applies to jurisdictions that have not met their pro rata share RENA or have not submitted APRs. HCD releases SB 423 determinations annually in June, which take into account permit data from the previous year's APR. Since June 2018, state HCD has found the county out of compliance with meeting its very low income and low income RENA. Therefore, the county remains subject to the streamlining provisions of SB 423. The preparation of the APR is an administrative activity that does not authorize new development or otherwise result in physical changes to the environment. Therefore, the preparation and submittal of this report is not a project and is not subject to CEQA. To conclude, staff recommends that your commission take the following actions. 1, receive and file the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report. 2, authorize staff to provide the annual progress report to the Board of Supervisors, the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, State HCD, and the City of Santa Barbara. And 3, lastly, determine that the preparation and submittal of this report is an activity that is not subject to CEQA. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Very thorough report, and I'm sure we have some questions. Commissioner Park, I know I have several, but let's start with Commissioner Park.
I'm going to ask a question. I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure I know the answer, but I'm sure you do. So could you briefly explain the relation of the housing element that we've adopted and all those rezones to the report you've just given?
I couldn't hear the question. Can you say that again? Commissioner Park?
I asked staff if they could briefly explain the relation of the housing element that's been recently adopted, especially the rezones, with the report they just gave.
Commissioner Park, through the chair, I'll take a first cut at that. So the APR is an annual report. Your commissioners have seen that. It has kind of 2 components. It's reporting on the county's progress in updating and maintaining our comprehensive plan. State law says general plan. So in one facet, we're reporting that in 2024, we have an adopted housing element. And then it's also reporting on sort of the implementation measures related to those elements. And so it's showing progress on the different programs and the actions in the housing element. And then the other kind of bigger component that has a lot of the data related to it, is reporting on the county's progress in meeting their regional housing needs allocation. And so that's sort of the permit data information, both for the South County progress and the North County progress. So for the housing element specifically, we're providing information in terms of having updated housing element in our comprehensive plan, and then also progress as it relates to implementation measures in the housing element that then also kind of relate to, hopefully, streamlining efforts to produce additional housing units that we would report on for the RENA cycle.
So when I look at that slide that was up there on the south coast, and it was over 4,000 units that'll be needed during this cycle, and we're like pretty short on all of them, and especially some of the categories. We can have some comfort that we've recently rezoned all these properties that will find property to build these 4,000 plus units. And in fact, we rezoned properties that are about 4,200, as I recall, units. So there's sort of a correspondence there, isn't there? Okay, well, thanks. That answers my question.
Great. Commissioner Reed?
I had well, actually very similar questions, since, the housing element update and the rezoning occupied a substantial amount of our time earlier in the year. So we got through that. We're looking at these building permits that have been issued with respect to progress to our RENA allocations and goals. Is there any way of tracking if any of these building permits were issued for projects which were part of our rezoning activity? Or are these projects that would have happened had our action on the housing element never have taken place? Is there any kind of a tally on if any shovels have been to or permits issued with respect to our work product?
Commissioner Reed, through the chair, we certainly have that data. It's not presented, but I can tell you that none of the rezone sites have made it that far in the process to have obtained building permits. We have several that are going through the entitlement process right now, and some are closer than others to approvals, but there's always a bit of a lag between getting your zoning entitlements and then actually getting your building permits. And since we had to report on building permits, I think you will continue to see a bit of a lag between the rezones and when we'll actually be able to count those units towards our RENA.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. A second question, when I'm looking at both South County, 2 ag employee dwellings are shown here, and I think North County, 1. Well, up in the 4th district, and I know a lot of the 3rd district, ag employee housing is, a critical need, because if you satisfy that, it opens up a lot of other low-income housing in towns and other places that would be available and help satisfy the need for that. So with respect to the fact, actually kind of a disappointingly low number of AEDs. Do you have any, what's the volume? How many people are these AEDs that have been permitted? How many people are those scheduled, planned to accommodate? Do you have any information on that? I mean, a dozen, 100?
Commissioner Reed, through the chair, I believe each of those are just basically single-family dwelling type ag employee dwellings. So
those
they're not like
AEDs
bunkhouses or complexes that they're
Okay.
providing housing for like a family
So
or maybe.
headed in the right direction, but rather minuscule compared to our needs. So hopefully something can be done to enhance those. Thank you.
Commissioner Park?
I have a follow-up on Commissioner Reed's questions. I really remember in 2018 when we went over the ag and employee dwelling unit ordinance, and we had more hearings than there are units that were built in 2024 or permits pulled. I don't think now is exactly the right time, but I'd like to ask a question that we can figure out when to answer it. What did we do wrong? I mean, we went through a lot of pain to work through the ag employee dwelling unit ordinance, did our best possible job, and no one's building units under it. I mean, it's just not happening. And like you said, these are all single-family dwelling units, so I think they're probably, some of them are disguised family housing for family of owners. So pick a time.
Well, Commissioner Park through the chair, hard to say what we did wrong. I think where we may, there was a big effort in downshifting the permit requirements, that planning and development issues for these units. There's still the barriers and obstacles associated with water and wastewater service that I think continue to present an obstacle. And beyond that, it's, there's only so much we can do. The whole lead a horse to water, can't force it to drink. So a lot of it is on just the private side. There's only so much we can do to get these projects coming through.
I tell you, one thing I wonder about is, I don't know if it's our job to go advertise that these programs are available, but I noticed when ADUs were first legalized and more legalized each year by the state, there was kind of a delay in the public understanding what they were and actually building them out. And I wonder if the AED program is well understood by the people that would best take advantage of it. But that's not a topic for today. Thanks.
Did you have any other questions?
I just wanted to add one last thing, which is that the Board of Supervisors did hold a hearing on farm worker housing back in January or December, and did direct staff to come back with some, in our annual work plan that we'll be presenting to the board in April, with some options for basically further efforts that the county can take to try to streamline and incentivize additional farm worker housing projects. One other thing we're looking at is, as part of a requirement under ADU law, we have to come up with and develop pre-approved plans that are available for property owners that they can basically use as a way to get through the building permit process more quickly. And we are considering looking at making those available for ag employee dwellings as well.
Did you begin your introduction to that for ADUs, and hopefully they'd work for ag employee units? Is that what you said?
Right, the pre-approved plans that,
Yeah.
that we're working on, that those could be developed and potentially utilized both for ADUs as well as theoretically ag employee dwellings.
Okay. Commissioner Commissioner Reed.
Just one additional kind of add-on question. We've talked about ag employee dwellings and the fact it seems to be, well, greatly underutilized. I also mentioned that the regulations and ordinances for AEO, Ag Enterprise Ordinance, are some of your work product for this year. I've been getting a number of questions from rural landowners about what is the AEO, how can we use it, what are the benefits? So I'm just wondering, are there any plans for outreach, trainings, seminars to let landowners and ag employers really avail themselves of these opportunities, to kind of reach to increase that, and hopefully by so doing increase their utilization of these programs that we spend so much time, and you spend so much time creating?
Commissioner Reed through the chair, we don't have any particular plans for like workshops or advertising or things of that nature. One thing we are going to be working and developing are some handouts and checklists and things of that nature that can be available on our website that can answer frequently asked questions and give a clue as to sort of summarizing and synthesizing the opportunities available under the program. So at least those can be available as a resource.
Okay, I realize you're not marketing people, but I think the public would appreciate anything you might do to make it more available and more user-friendly so they can be aware of these things that we've created for their benefit. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. This should go pretty fast. So on the first page of your staff report, this new acronym, the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, is that a new moniker up there? They're so busy giving us laws. Have they given themselves a new department?
Madam Chair and members of the commission, yeah, you're correct that it is a
Innovation.
new name for the previous Office of Planning and Research, so OPR.
Oh, okay. Well, I think maybe were talking to Mr. Musk. Okay, off the record. On page 2, your summary, at the bottom of paragraph 2 under 3.0, you have a concluding statement that says the county must accommodate 74% of the 4152. What does that actually mean? I mean, we have these RENA numbers on an 8-year cycle. The 74%, I guess I'm confused where that's coming in the mandates. How does that work? It's in the staff report, so I'm not sure it's actually called out like this in a slide.
Commissioner.
Last sentence of paragraph 2 under item 3.0.
So SB CAG divided these subregions, our RENA, into these 2 subregions because South Coast has a lack of housing. They need more for workers. So they allocated 74% of our total RENA to need to be built in the South Coast, and the other 26% is in the North County.
Oh, that's just the split geographically. I thought that was a percentage completion. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. And then on your table 1, which is really long, so thank you for putting all the work into this because I know you've been very busy this last year. When I go down to item 6, collaborate with developers and employers for workforce housing. Can you tell me what that sounds like? Because I've been talking to some of the developers and some employers, and they're in this sort of amorphous, gee, we can probably work up a deal, and we're still talking to each other. You know, what does it look like from your angle in terms of those 2 stakeholders getting together?
Commissioners, so Program 6 is called Housing for Farm Workers and Other Employees in the housing element. And staff is preparing the budget for next year, and they're planning to put this into our fiscal year to start working on this for next year.
But it's farm workers.
Farm workers and other employees, so both.
Okay.
There's 5 actions on this program. One of them includes pursuing 100 affordable housing units for farm workers by 2031. So there's just different action items to promote farm worker housing and worker housing.
Okay. I just would like to get through this list here, and I know we're going to come back with some more questions. So the density, item number 13, the density bonus program for moderate income housing. Isn't that kind of what we're seeing in the 330s and the Housing Accountability Act cases? Because they can use that for moderate, right?
Commissioner, or commissioners, the program was specifically to look at and explore establishing a local state density bonus program that would incentivize moderate income units. Historically, state density bonus has been focused on the lower income, very low income, and there weren't many opportunities or incentives for developers to construct moderate income units. So we were looking to see if there's a window or opportunity there to establish sort of a local program that maybe goes above and beyond what the state offers in terms of density bonus for moderate income units. Now, in the last year and a half or so, there have been changes in state law that pull in and give more incentives for moderate income units. So kind of the window of opportunity has closed a bit and narrowed. So it's still about trying to see if there's any further that the county can go beyond what the state is already offering to incentivize the construction of moderate income units.
Okay.
And we
Okay.
don't have an answer to that yet.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the explanation. On your item number 16, the top of page 4, you have objective design development standards to MLUDC and coastal zoning ordinance. That's actually very pertinent to today's other case. So where are you at the CZO with the objective design standards?
We actually anticipate, so the Coastal Commission conditionally certified those standards along with a host of other coastal ordinance amendments to address state housing laws. That happened back in December. They had 2 modifications. We took that to the board to accept the modifications just a few weeks ago, which the board did. And so we do anticipate actually final certification authorization of the amendments as modified next month. I don't
Okay.
have an exact date, but sometime next month, so we're close.
So then that means the cases that are SB 330 or Housing Affordability Act, they would go against those those objective design standards as sort of an attachment to our staff reports of some kind. I mean, we don't have that for the second case up today, but is that your intent to, once they're on the books in the coastal zone, we'd look at that as an attachment?
I have to defer to Mr. Seawards on that, but, if a project's already in process under SB 330, they would have been locked into whatever standards were in effect at the time they were determined complete. So unfortunately, those design standards would not likely apply to some of those existing applications, but certainly new applications moving forward.
Okay. All right, my last question is, the last page under 4.4, the Government Code section, streamline ministerial approval, and you mentioned earlier in the report about the SB 423 new law. Is this essentially the out of compliance and brings back in the builder's remedy option? No.
Madam Chair, not builder's remedy.
Okay.
So, yeah, I want to make that clear. It's just, it's kind of just holding a little flame to the fire or to the feet of jurisdictions if they're not making sufficient progress towards meeting the RENA. They need to offer and have a streamlined provision in place for housing projects where they can be approved ministerially. So they have to meet certain criteria. They have to provide a certain percentage of units to be affordable in order to qualify and be eligible. They have to be in urban areas. So there are some limitations. As we were taking those ordinance amendments through the decision maker process last year, we did indicate at the time that to date we've only seen and processed a few SB 35, now SB 423 projects. It's just now in effect in the coastal zone. It hadn't been up until January 1 of this year. So we may see more of them, but with other opportunities and the requirement for affordability, hard to see how many projects might take advantage of it. So yes, distinct from builder's remedy. The housing element, regardless of our progress towards meeting our RENA, the housing element remains in substantial compliance and will continue to be in that position for the foreseeable future.
Well, when we were doing the housing element, there was talk about if we didn't adopt it in time and if we didn't have a sufficient one, then the state could have other penalties to us. And so this progress that we're making, it doesn't look great now, but as everybody's pointed out, we might make better progress in the coming years. I'm hearing from the development community a lot. They're frankly a little bit concerned about flooding the market with a lot of units at the same time. There's an economic part on their thing. So at what point do we not make progress in that bar to 41, 42 fast enough? I mean, is the state showing their cards on that, or we just keep on going year after year and show them the best we can, and what are the repercussions that they might throw our way?
Well, in regards to actual unit production, this is the consequence, is SB 423.
Okay.
The other issue you might recall is the issue of no net loss. But that's different than actual unit production. No net loss is whether we have the capacity in place to accommodate our RENA. And capacity is driven by available sites, and that's where the rezones came into play, is showing that we have the capacity to support our arena. It's different than actual building of units. So as long as we continue to have that capacity in place to meet our arena, then we're in okay shape. If we find ourselves further in the cycle, no longer having sufficient capacity, maybe because projects are coming in at lower densities than we anticipated, or not providing as we've already started to see, not providing the number of affordable units that we were assuming with our arena projections, then we could get into a situation of no net loss, where we no longer have sufficient capacity remaining to support and meet our arena. The consequence of that is, if we get to that point, we would have to look at potential additional rezones or other ways in order to make up that shortfall. So that's kind of the consequence. And we have we're in the process of wrapping up creation of a tracking tool that will help us monitor our no net loss.
Great answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Tuttle. Commissioner Park?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm that your answer about Program 6 to Chair Bridley's questions, it's the same Program 6 that I was trying to refer to in my questions to Director Plowman, right? On all employed dwellings as opposed to just farm worker dwellings?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Reed?
Yeah, I'd like to change topics, if I might, away from the housing element for a moment. I noticed in this program, and what we've heard before, are your references to working toward the environmental justice element, which is, pretty much, I believe, scheduled to roll out this year. I see your comment that the staff continued completing an internal draft environmental justice element piece in 224, and you hope to roll it out by summer this year. Now, who is that document strictly an in-house document prepared by P&D staff, or has it been prepared with cooperation from some outside consultants or NGOs? Is it totally an in-house document?
Commissioner Reed, through the chair, there was no other consultants preparing the document or NGOs preparing the document. So it has been prepared in-house along with coordination amongst other county departments, but they're in gathering the information to inform the preparation of the document. There was extensive public outreach and community outreach and involvement with various stakeholders across the impacted communities.
Ag stakeholders and energy stakeholders, or strictly NGOs?
No, we went to the Ag Advisory Committee on a number of occasions and consulted with. We had open forum community meetings where members of the ag community, farm workers, employers,
Okay,
various
I just
stakeholders were
wanted to
involved.
establish that because since ag, energy are quite foundational to the economy in the North County, a great number of people up there are looking at this emergence of this environmental justice element with what I would say would be great anticipation. I would just leave it at great anticipation as to what the end product will be and the potential effects might be on their industries. So you still anticipate rolling it out and appearing before us early summer, late summer? Is that a good
I would
prediction?
hope late spring, early summer.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions. I think we just need to make the motion that we received and want to forward. Is there, public comment. What am I thinking? I didn't have a lot of sleep last night, fair disclosure, so do we have any public comment?
For those people online, if you'd like to speak on this item, raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. I don't believe we received any physical speaker slips, and not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to deliberations and hopefully a motion. Commissioner Cooney, yes.
Thank you. No questions, but to move along our day and this item, I'm happy to make the motion, but I don't have all the provisions of the motion that staff suggested. Oh, there it is. Great, thank you. It wasn't in the copies that I had, so. The motion I would make is that we receive and file the APR. Direct staff to provide the APR to the board, state HCD, LCI, what's that?
That's the new HCD, the something, oh, the new OPR, yeah, it's the one I asked about, their new moniker, Land Use and Climate Innovation.
Great. You can send it to anybody you want, but include them. And the city of Santa Barbara. Determine the APR is not subject to CEQA, which you've demonstrated. Anything else? All right. That's my motion.
I'll second that. I'm going to go out of order. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. You want a roll call?
Commissioner Cooney?
Aye.
Commissioner Park?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez?
Aye.
Chair Briley?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
You wanna
Do we
take a
need,
nap?
yeah. Do you want to take 5 minutes for a break to reset up staff? Does that sound good? 5? Okay. Okay, we're going to call our Planning Commission meeting of February 26th back to order, and that brings us to our second item on today's agenda, which was first in position 1. Mr. Villalobos, do you want to read that into the record?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The following is a hearing on the request of Mission Isla Vista Partners LP to consider case numbers 24 DVP 5, 24 CDP 21, and to determine the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Public Resources Code Section 21159.25.
Thank you. And as a permit item, this is the point where we ask the commissioners to disclose ex parte and site visit disclosures. Does anybody have anything to make? No, I do have a number of them. I spoke with Pegeen, oh my gosh, I'm on a first-name basis with her, but she wrote the first letter. She submitted the first letter that we had in, here we go. I really apologize again. just
Is
to
that
try-
the letter that was signed by multiple people?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So that's in the record clearly. And then I also spoke to Kaylee Grubb, who's chair of the South County BAR. And I also spoke to several people in the neighborhood. I didn't get their names down when I did site visits yesterday. So that was it, and I've had no contact with the applicant. Okay, with that, let's roll with staff.
Hi, good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Kathleen Volpe, and I will be presenting the Mission Isla Vista Partners LP Housing Development Project. The project site is located at 6737 Sueño Road, which is shown here in green. It's in the Glida Community Plan Area, 2nd Supervisoral District. The parcel is 0.65 acres. It's zoned medium density student residential, SRM, and it's surrounded by land zoned SRM and recreational REC. It is bounded by Sueño Road to the north, a vacant lot to the east, and residential development to the south and west. Here we have photos demonstrating the existing development and lot. The photo on the left is taken from across the street, and it shows the site to be relatively flat and currently developed with a single-family dwelling and a detached garage. The aerial photo on the right shows the dwelling, garage, and associated storage sheds on site. The parcel does not fall within any flood overlays, and it is not located within any environmentally sensitive habitat or any buffer to environmentally sensitive habitat. Again, it is surrounded by residential development and a vacant lot. Here we take a look at the project site. For reference, Sueño Road is located on the right side of this image. Building 1 is located closest to Sueño Road, and it will contain 6 units and the management office. Building 2, which contains 3 units, falls behind Building 1. Building 1 and 2 fall on the eastern side of the parcel, which shares the parcel line with the vacant lot. And Building 3 is proposed in the rear of the lot and will contain 7 units. The project includes 24 parking spaces, which are highlighted here in yellow, 24 bike lockers, and 52 bike racks. Both of these are highlighted in purple, and all of these will serve the development. The project proposes the construction of 3 new 3-story multifamily buildings totaling 15,213 net square feet. The project includes 16 3-bedroom units, a management office, and will have a maximum height of 36 feet 7 inches. 2 of the units will be very low-income units pursuant to state density bonus law, and 2 will be moderate-income units pursuant to the Coastal Plan Policy 5-10, which requires 25% of the total units in a project to be affordable. The next 4 slides will show the elevations of the proposed buildings. The first slide shows the north elevation, and on it we can see that there's buildings 1 and 3. The second slide shows the southern elevation, which shows buildings 2 and 3. And here we have the east elevation, which shows all 3 buildings. As you can see here, all 3 buildings are attached via a walkway. This walkway has been reviewed by other departments, including fire, and no comments and conditions were documented, and it was therefore found consistent with our county policies. And the last elevation is the west elevation, offering yet another view of all three of these buildings. The project is being processed pursuant to the Housing Accountability Act and Senate Bill 330, known as SB 330. The Housing Accountability Act applies to multifamily housing development projects. This act states that the projects that are consistent with objective policies and standards can only be disapproved or conditioned to a lower density if there is a specific adverse impact upon the public health and safety that cannot be mitigated. SB 330 revised the Housing Accountability Act to vest projects in the standards at the time a complete SB 330 application is submitted. A complete SB 330 pre-application was submitted for this project on January 29, 2024. Review of the project is limited to objective county policies and standards. SB 330 also limits the county to have no more than 5 hearings on a project. Of note, objective design standards have not been approved or certified by the Coastal Commission at this time. The project includes state density bonus law requests that are summarized on the slide here and that are also addressed in the staff report. So SDBL allows for developers to not only increase the allowed density for their project, but also to request to modify or remove certain development standards in order to make their project more economically or physically feasible. The applicant for the Mission Isla Vista project proposes to provide 16 new multifamily residential units, 2 of which will be very low-income units. The project is 18% affordable according to the State Department of Housing and Community Development's criteria, and therefore is allowed a 50% density bonus. 3 incentives and concessions and unlimited waivers. The applicant is requesting an increase in density from 11 units to 16 units on the parcel, which is a 45% density bonus, which falls below the 50% density bonus, which is allowed through SDBL. And they are also asking for 3 concessions for bedroom density, setback reductions, and height. The first concession is increase in bedroom density. The request is for an increase from the allowed 10 bedrooms of the SRM zone district to 48 bedrooms. The second concession is a request for setback reductions. The setbacks for the SRM zone district are shown on this slide in red. The applicant is requesting a front setback reduction of 50 foot from center line and 20 foot from right-of-way to 12 feet 7 inches from right-of-way, and that is shown by the blue line. The side setback reductions that are requested are from 12 feet 9 inches to 8 feet 6 inches on the west side setback, which is shown in green, and 12 feet 3 inches on the east side setback, which is shown in yellow. And finally, the rear setback reduction is a request from 25 feet to 10 feet, and that is shown in purple. The third request is to allow a height of 36 feet 7 inches, which is shown here by the blue line. This is in lieu of the 25-foot height limit for the SRM zone district, which is shown here by the pink line. Article 2 requires 97 parking spaces for the proposed development. However, as shown here with the green buffer on the left side, the project is located within a half mile of a major transit stop. And pursuant to Government Code 65863.2, known as AB 2097, no on-site parking is required. AB 2097 is a statute that prohibits public agencies from imposing any minimum automobile parking requirements on a residential, commercial, or other development project that is located within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop. Nonetheless, the proposed project has provided 24 parking spaces, and they are highlighted here in yellow. The proposed project is consistent with the Housing Accountability Act provisions. As discussed earlier, is only subject to objective standards and policies. It can only be disapproved or conditioned to a lower density if it will result in a public health and safety impact that cannot be mitigated. The project meets the definition of a multifamily housing development project because it is for multifamily residential development. The project is consistent with the objective policies in the Santa Barbara County Comprehensive Plan, including the Coastal Land Use Plan and the Goleta Community Plan. The project is also consistent with the local coastal plan. The project was analyzed and found to be consistent with policies regarding adequate services, housing, cultural resources, noise, and visual resources. The project is also consistent with objective standards in Article 2. Multifamily residential use is a permanent use in the SRM zone. As discussed previously, the applicant has requested three concessions from development standards as allowed through SDBL. With the approval of the requested concessions, the project is consistent with all objective standards, including bedroom density, setbacks, and height. The proposed project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA guideline sections 21159.25. The exemption is for residential or mixed-use housing projects. The project is consistent with the general plan and zoning. The site is within the unincorporated area. It's less than 5 acres. It's substantially surrounded by urban uses, and there is no sensitive habitat on site. The project was evaluated for potential impacts that would result in significant effects in transportation, noise, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, and water quality. The project was found to fall below county thresholds and screening criteria and determined to not have a significant impact to these areas. Based on the information and analysis provided in the staff report and in this presentation, staff recommends that your commission make the required findings for approval of the project, including CEQA findings, determine the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines sections 21159.25, and approve the project subject to the conditions of approval included as Attachment B to the staff report. Thank you, and staff is now available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Volpe. Does anyone on the commission have questions for staff? Commissioner Reed.
I just have a question with respect to its distance of less than a half mile to the transit stop. That's just done basically on a half mile, a circle of half mile radius with the transit stop in the middle. So it's not really reflective of the footpath someone might have to take, the walking distance.
Commissioner Reed, no, that's, we created this GIS layer. We kind of worked with SBCAG too on this to create a layer. And so that cutout you're seeing is actually mapped similar to what SBCAG is, half mile. So that's just the standard for how we're going to measure a half mile. Yeah.
Okay, are there, Commissioner Martinez?
One quick question. So we have 16 units, and how many square feet are each of the units?
Let us look into that and we'll get back to you, okay?
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, well, I had several conversations with staff about this. I'm not sure that I have additional questions for them today. We can probably move on to the, I'm sorry, Commissioner Park, you're on.
Yes. I have some questions about the state statutes, how they work, and how they relate to our findings. And it appears that under the HAA, SB 330, that we can't reduce density or deny the project unless there are specific adverse impacts that affect public safety and health. And so we can't, it's not only that we can't reduce the density, we can't deny the project, right?
We concur with that, yes.
Yeah. Now, moving on to 2097, which is AB 2097, right?
Yep.
Okay. And that's the one that, of course, that requires that we not require parking okay, for anything within this half a mile as the crow flies, okay?
I think what's
Use the
interesting is-
colloquial.
Yeah, in that law, they actually said the word prohibit, which was, I don't think they could have been any more clear, but we're prohibited from requiring parking.
Okay, so I know I can't reduce density or even deny a project in the HAA, but under 2097, I can't require parking. Can I deny the project? Does it bar us from denying a project?
Commissioner Park, I do not think, we do not think that there are grounds for denying this project. We think it meets all of the objective standards that we have in our code. And we've laid that out for you. The DVP is a permit type that is triggered by the amount of structural development, and it does have discretionary findings. But we laid it out for you guys that even though there are discretionary findings that are subjective, you're still, the regulatory review for a housing accountability project is just objective requirements. And so we laid that out for you guys. Did that answer your question? I'm wondering if it did or not.
It helps.
Okay.
But it's not quite there.
Okay.
And in all fairness, I should disclose, I called Ms. Volpe yesterday and prepared her for these questions, which I'm sure you appreciated. I think you're going right to the heart of it when you refer to the discretionary type findings.
Yeah.
And one of them is on page A1 of the
Yep.
attachment. Oh, no, that's, yeah, it is page A1. No, I'm not sure it's page A1. Anyway, it's finding 2.1.1, and then they're divided into sub-findings. And the one I'm referring to is 5. It's infamous. It says, "We find that the project will not be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the neighborhood and will not be incompatible with the surrounding area." Okay? I presume that finding is in there because it's in our development plan portion of our ordinance.
That is correct, yes.
Right, so it would generally be in there
Right.
in all of them. And what I'm having a hard time doing is reconciling,
Yep.
okay, looking at what would be something that would be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the neighborhood and not be incompatible with the surrounding area with these state mandates. Because frankly, I can see that a 3-story building that's 50% higher than other buildings there and has much more density and has some parking, which is great because they're not required to have any, but nothing like we would predict the demand for parking will be from the number of students that'll live there. And I think, if pushed, we could probably make a finding that there's a specific adverse impact from flooding the neighborhood with the number of cars that are likely to be there from statistics we already have, and that will affect the public health and safety, certainly the safety of all that increased traffic. If the commission wanted to go there, we could probably be there. But that's why I asked about 2097, because it would seem to me that 2097 would be completely thwarted, okay, if organizations like us could say, yeah, we can't condition you to require parking, but because you're going to flood the neighborhood with cars, we can deny the project under our general findings. So that's what I'm asking, does 2097 have something that goes beyond we can't require parking, but says we can't deny a project for lack of parking? I didn't see it, but I don't know.
Commissioner Park and the commission, it is a bit confounding.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the question. I think what I want to stress to you guys is when we're talking about reasons to deny a project, it has to be based on objective, even for the public health and safety.
Yeah.
There has to be objective standards or criteria to which it is not meeting a safety requirement. And each department has reviewed these, let's just say for traffic trips, okay? It did not generate the amount of traffic trips that triggered a threshold issue. And so, and fire reviewed this for all of their standards. And so I think there would be worked, if the commission thought that they could deny this based on some objective safety standard, I haven't seen what that is at this point. That's where I'm coming from on this. But I do think it is difficult to reconcile these subjective findings that are required from the permit type with the state law requirement that you can only review this against objective standards. We're doing our best to try and give you guys the regulatory environment, and but I understand why you're asking those questions.
And by the way, just because I'm asking these difficult questions, that doesn't mean I'm disparaging your report or your
Yes,
efforts. It
no.
means I'm complimenting your report and
We
your
understand.
efforts, because I think that you really laid things out very well in what's kind of an interesting, tricky project.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No,
Well,
thank
this will come up again in deliberations.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Yeah. I did some sleuthing too. I wanted to provide this information to the commission because I think it's going to come up on all of our IV projects.
Yeah.
I checked in with UCSB on some of their data related to their student parking and travel trips. In 2024, they estimated that only 8% commuted to campus in single occupancy vehicles. So there is data that we're starting to gather about how much the students have cars, and but I'm just giving you a hint that I don't think it's as high as we think that it is, but there's interesting data that we'll be gathering over the next year.
Well, I think it's not just the numbers, it's the character of the
Yeah.
parking.
Yeah.
I think most students are not going to drive cars into campus.
Right.
Okay, I lived in Isla Vista as a student. I didn't drive my car into campus,
Right.
but I had a car because that's how I got to Isla Vista.
Right.
Okay, I don't think most students come to Isla Vista from home on a train or a horse or an airplane. They drive, and those cars are parked somewhere, and then they do other things with them. But anyway, that's not a question, so I'm done with questions. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Did we have any other questions from the commission?
And we have info on the unit size for Commissioner
Okay,
Martinez.
you want to report that out?
Yeah, Commissioners, through the chair. Yeah, so bedroom sizes vary from 118 square feet to 178 square feet.
That's bedroom size, you said?
Yes. Yes.
But the size of the unit is altogether, are they uniform or they vary?
I'm sorry, I have to double check that
Okay.
again.
The applicant can help answer that too. Yep.
Okay. I had a couple questions, and you kind of building on what Commissioner Parks said, I think it's frankly insane that we have development plan findings in front of us and we can't rely on them at all, because I probably couldn't make at least 6 of these. This is a very difficult case for me to approve. I'll have words with the applicant once he makes his presentation about things that he should have done, and I'm going to ask him to do to try to salvage something, but this is completely inconsistent with neighborhood compatibility, and I've talked to plenty of people in that neighborhood. I spent 3 hours out there yesterday. So if we're going to be stuck with these housing mandates, and especially coming off the presentation from Mr. Tuttle's division today, I wish we could do something with the development plan text that talks about how these would not be applicable for HAA or anything, because now we've got layered housing laws that are saying just ignore everything that's been in your code for 40 years. That's really what you're asking us to do. And that's a tough turn for me to make. Commissioner Park has heard me struggle with it in the 2nd District for many months. And when you put this stuff in front of us to rely on, it really puts us in a difficult situation. Do I want housing in Isla Vista? Yes, I do. This project, I'm not really keen on it, but I'm being told I have no choice and we have to approve it. Then don't give me the development plan findings. I don't want to get into deliberations, but my suggestion is we look at how you have the development plan findings on these HAA programs. And as long as we're touching our ordinance in a gazillion ways per Mr. Tuttle's work program, maybe there's something you can do with that. The other thing is, I know that there is, I've heard of, and I haven't participated in it, the Isla Vista Park and Rec District and the Community Services District had started a parking survey in Isla Vista. Do you have any update on that or where that is moving in terms of infrastructure planning in Isla Vista?
Thank you, Chair Bradley. I looked on their website yesterday. They have a draft up, but it is not finalized yet. We did meet with them at some point last year, Director Plowman, myself, Mr. Tuttle. They acknowledged that the AB 2097 went to effect. What they were encouraging us to do because of that zero parking requirement is to provide as much alternative transportation demand management things in a project that we can. And so we're really looking at as much bike parking as possible. On some future projects you're seeing, we may be looking at leases that say you can't have a vehicle, bus passes, and so we're exploring as many of those options as we can. So we have been meeting with them, yeah.
Is it legally, do we have a path to actually affect lease language like that? That would be very powerful.
Can you repeat that question? I'm
Do
sorry.
we actually legally have the ability to affect lease language like that, aside from just affordability restrictions?
To affect the
Lease language to
Lease language.
require or prohibit
I
cars?
think we're asking applicants to put forward a transportation demand management to demonstrate consistency with the LCP and our objective standards, and hoping that they put their best foot forward and seeing what we're getting.
Okay,
Okay. I mean, we have to be careful, right?
okay. Okay, so I have other comments that can just wait till deliberation, so why don't we go to?
I have a
I'm
quick
sorry,
question.
Mr. Martinez, yes, Commissioner Martinez.
Is there any occupancy restrictions on this? In other words, we have 3 bedrooms per unit. Is it restricted to 1 person, 2 people, 3 people?
Chair Martinez, or Commissioner Martinez, let me get back to you. I mean, I remember talking with building and safety about this, and there are some parameters. I just can't remember them off the top of my head.
Okay.
Okay.
Because that's important to me, because if it's 1 person per bedroom, obviously, or, I'm just figuring it's a very big number of people in this area if it's 2 people per bedroom. Thank you.
Right.
Well, it's
And I think-
16 units and 98 residents is the assumption, so it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think to be clear, for the project before you, which is the zoning permits, we do not have standards like that. Now, building and fire, when they get to those permits, may have different standards, but in our decision here today, the zoning code does not have any of those standards.
Understood.
Okay.
And I had one more question. Ms. Volpe, I know you guys said that you didn't get any comments, and I think you said Santa Barbara City Police. It's not city, but it's county sheriff that's actually law enforcement here, is that correct? Or is it county CHP? I mean, state CHP.
I believe it's the commissioners through chair at the county CHP.
Like in Montecito and Carpinteria?
Or
Okay.
sheriff, I'm sorry, sheriff, county sheriff.
County sheriff,
Yeah.
thank you. And they didn't have any kind of a letter of comment on this? Because
No,
we,
They did not.
okay, all right. Commissioner Cooney?
Just incidental to what we're talking about is we did get 3 letters by my count from the public, and I wanted to deal with whether we can consider those or would rely on people being present to testify. Have you had a chance to prepare an answer on the timing of these letters?
So everything that is longer than 1 page was on time. So the letters that came in after your deadline are no more than a page in length. So
So we can consider
they're
them
part of the record without action, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions from the commission for staff, and this would bring us to applicant's presentation. Please state your name for the record.
I'm messaging Craig. I can't.
Hi, my name is Lonnie Roy. I am the agent for the property owner, and I have a brief presentation that I'll see if it can be pulled up.
I missed your first name.
Lonnie,
Lonnie, that's right.
thank you. So I'll go through this briefly because I think Kathleen
Oh,
did an excellent.
can you do this in 10 minutes?
Yeah.
You go with that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
you go.
this will be pretty brief. I think Kathleen introduced the project pretty well, so I'll just kind of go through our logic on some of the items. So as was mentioned, this is the project site. It has an existing single-family home, two-car garage, and a number of accessory structures. A point that I wanted to say was that the current unit is owner-occupied, so demolition of that structure wouldn't reduce any rental units in the area. So as you kind of look west in the neighborhood, it's primarily composed of single-family homes. You can see photo 5, a lot of the buildings kind of look like that. As you go further east down the street, it's primarily composed of two-story multifamily structures. And the current parcel is relatively underdeveloped, with just the single-family home and two-car garage. So the logic of the site plan was east of the project site, that's where you see more of the multifamily development. So we wanted to orient most of the massing towards the east to kind of continue that transition, and then also push the massing back as it abutted the single-family neighborhood. So that's why the parking was oriented on the west portion of the site, and the massing was on the east and the rear. We looked at neighborhood compatibility more as Isla Vista as a whole. Isla Vista has a significant amount of mid-century, low-rise multifamily structures that are 3 stories, and they have relatively simple massing, simple fenestration, simple detailing. It's very efficient, economic housing. So we kind of took that as the neighborhood compatibility and applied it to the architecture. So on the next 4 slides, you'll see the building elevations and then buildings within Isla Vista that the architecture kind of took cues from. So in the architecture, you're seeing simple fenestration with stacking massing and then kind of simple facade ornamentation to help articulate it. So the language primarily on the architecture is there are areas of horizontal siding that would be a fiber cement type siding, and then there are these vertical wood fins to add kind of a vertical language to the architecture. So this is the south elevation, so the rear elevation. And then one element to point out is all of the units except for 3 of them have outdoor patios. So the top 3 units that you're seeing here, those would be the 3 units that do not have outdoor patios. And regarding the average unit sizes, the 3 that are at the top there, those have an average of 777 square feet. The other units that have the patios, those are larger units, so those have an average of 1,175 square feet. So this is the north elevation, again, seeing sample photos of other low-rise multifamily structures in Isla Vista that represent, simple fenestration, simple massing, the exterior perimeter walkway. This is the east elevation, so this would be seen from that park space. This is the west elevation. So the 2 buildings are faded slightly back because the parking lot is what's against that elevation, and it's just that rear building that's closer to that side. Landscape-wise, the front and the parking lot has some larger canopy trees, so those are proposed as jacaranda or sycamore trees. Surrounding the parking lot are larger palm-type structures, so those would be queen palms or date palms. Then surrounding the east and the south perimeters of the buildings, those would be narrower, skinnier type palm trees, so king palms or giant bird of paradise, and then there are some larger canopy trees in the rear corner where the bike parking, and there's a little bit of open space there. Here are some photos of what kind of the plant material is proposed as. Thank you, and then I'd also like to thank staff for their help in processing this project, and I think it was done relatively efficiently, and we really appreciate it, and we're here for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but does anyone else have a question for the architect? Commissioner Park?
I do, they're little things. There's no elevators there, right?
Correct, yeah, so there's 2 stairwells at either end of the exterior walkway.
Yeah, and if you were like 4 stories with parking underneath the building, you'd have elevators that you don't want to pay for, right?
If there weren't any units on the ground floor, yes.
Yeah.
We would require
And
elevators.
then, how are the low-income and moderate housing units, and that's 3 total of those?
It's 2 very low income and then 2 moderate.
Oh, 4, okay.
Yeah.
How are they distributed among the buildings, or where are they located? Are they all together? Are they in a particular building? Are they?
They haven't been selected at this time. Typically, the requirements are to distribute them evenly, and they have to be of an equivalent size of the market rate units. So it's very likely that 3 of the 1,175 units would represent a mix of that, and then 1 of the smaller 777 square foot units would represent one of them.
And were you involved in putting together this design?
Sort of. I'm the agent. I'm not the architect.
Okay, well,
but yeah, I had a hand in.
I just wanted to say, for your benefit and the architects, even though I might make remarks that are critical of this kind of housing where it is and so forth, I think that your team, came up with a very clever design to fit with the various laws that are applicable and with the site. So I'm not wanting to disparage your effort.
No, we appreciate any comments.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Cooney, do you have any questions? Oh, sorry. Okay. I have a number of them, Mr. Roy. I spent about 3.5 hours yesterday in this neighborhood, and I walked up and down the street, and I have to contest your picture of this neighborhood. On this block, on the opposite side of the street, you have one 2-story element at the corner, another one next to that, and one 2-story element at the very end on the northwest side of that street. And on your side of the street, you've got one 2-story element opposite the park. So this is entirely dominated by mostly 1 and 2-story single-family homes that have been converted into some sort of apartment projects, with a variety of densities. So, and on the street behind you, where Ms. Pegeen Souter lives, it's a similar distribution. Where we see the 3-story is around the corner on Camino del Sur, which is more of an arterial leading into Isla Vista. So your characterization of how this fits into the street, I have to contest. When you were last in front of us, you may recall, you had the case across from the Hollister, it's on Hollister Avenue, and you were across from the Page Youth Center. And I said, I was going to rely on you to talk to the neighbors. So can you tell me if you had any outreach with the neighbors on this case? Because we didn't have the benefit of SBAR. We had the noticing legally required by the county. But what kind of neighborhood outreach did you do?
There was not neighborhood outreach on this project.
Okay. Because when you were last here, I said, I'm going to remember your name, and I'm going to remember that project, and we will see a lot more of these 330s, and I'm going to call you on it. So I'm doing that now. But continuing on with the questions, I don't really understand the elevations very well, because I'm not reading the inset and the outset of where the decks are and where the fluctuation in the facades are. Can you try to help me understand that? And I don't know if it's on the site plan or on these elevations. Like you've got a recessed area.
Yeah, so.
Just do your best.
Yeah, so I don't know if this, let me see. The laser's not really showing on the screen. But you'll see on the buildings, there's kind of notches on the south and the east side that say private patios. So those are represented on the ground floor. For the two buildings along the easterly property line, those patios extend up on all 3 floors. On the southerly building, the rear building, those 2 patios only extend on the first and the second floor. The third floor doesn't have them. So
that's the south elevation.
yeah, so
I
you'll see in here kind of those 2 kind of grayish or bluish notches on this first and second floor. So those would be the private patios on that rear building. And
Okay,
then,
and so this is the building to the right of this east building elevation, correct?
yeah, so these 2 buildings are along the east elevation, or
So
the east
then
property
you've
line.
got the recessed at 3 stories, and then you've got the mustard color with the 6 windows, and then the strong vertical lines, is that at the same plane as the mustard facade?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And what is the intention of the stairwells between all the buildings?
So currently there's 2 proposed stairwells, and they're at either end of, I'll say, the exterior kind of catwalk structure. So going to the site plan, so one of them would come in facing the roadway, and the other one would be in that southwesterly frontage of the rear building there.
But what is the purpose? These are individual units, and so what is the function of the stairwells between all, I know it talks to me like a dorm.
Yeah.
So what
all,
is that?
all of the units, they access from that exterior walkway, and then that exterior walkway is connected to those 2 stairwells. Which is,
But, okay, so I can't get into the building on the south side of the property. I can get into that building individually, but the one in the middle of your east elevation, I can't get to that from a door at the bottom of that building? I have to
yeah,
in the
for
center?
the second and third floor units, yeah, you would have to use one of the stairwells at either end. There isn't a mid stairwell along that catwalk system.
Okay, so the catwalk is so that you have a little open space underneath, and you're counting that as open space of some kind?
No,
Stats?
we aren't. There's a 15% landscape requirement, which we're slightly above. That does not include any of the hardscape that's proposed on this right now.
Okay. I think that's it. Hang on. Staff did a great job of briefing me, so I don't have to ask you these on public. I think that's probably it. Okay. Commissioner Reed.
I have just in reviewing your plans, I mean, it looks like an efficient and very well-designed and attractive building, certainly more attractive than the, you said mid-century, definitely. Other three-story buildings you gave as exemplars in the area. So I think the design is fine. A couple of your plant materials I'm not too fond of, like jacaranda and sycamore, because come back 10 years later and the jacaranda is making a giant mess and the sycamore is starting to tear up the sidewalks. But I guess those are the developers' decisions. So I find it we probably have great utility, is attractive, but like so many, well, some of these we've seen before, and like we saw in the housing element, the real question we're going to be faced with is fit for the neighborhood. But apparently we're quite constrained with respect to that. So that's basically where we stand. But thank you. It does seem like it will be a benefit in terms of providing housing. But again, what we're going to be faced with when we get to deliberations is fit and how to reconcile that within the parameters that are available to us. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no, Mr. Martinez, Commissioner Martinez.
Yes.
Pardon me.
Good morning. You've obviously heard my question before, which is basically my question is focused on the size of the units, if it's a uniform square footage or does it vary per unit?
Yeah, so 3 of the units would be 777 square feet, and then the remainder of the units are all around 1,175 square feet.
Okay, I've heard, so basically these buildings are used, well, what it sounds like is that space which is available for shelter is being used for shelter, but are there laundry facilities in this place?
Yeah, so each unit would have their own in-unit laundry. There isn't a common laundry room.
Okay. Okay.
And then the manager's unit would be, again, I don't think this works on the screen, is at the northeast corner of the building. You'll see kind of in that corner, there's the mailboxes, there's the backflow for the fire prevention system, and a walkway that extends in front of the building. So that's where the manager's office would be located.
And then my next question is, how is it determined who gets the parking spaces?
It would be part of the lease. So the parking standard that we did apply on this was the state density bonus parking standard, which was 1.5 per unit. So that's how we got the number of parking spaces that are currently proposed. So some units would have 1 assigned, some units would have 2 assigned.
Okay. Is a low-income housing and mid-housing, is that included within the ability to get that parking or not?
It would be. So every unit would at least have 1 space assigned to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if I don't see any more questions, let's go to public comment. And can you forewarn me of who's online, and are there any speaker slips, Commissioner Park? If anyone's in the room and wants to address the commission on this item, please complete a speaker slip, which is in the rear of the room, and submit it before we get 5 minutes into this discussion. There may not be anyone here.
And Madam Chair, would that be 3 minutes each for each
Yes.
speaker? Okay. Just want to make sure that clear at the beginning. So we do have 2 speakers online. We'll start with Julia Barbosa to be followed by Peggy Sutar.
Thank you. Ms. Barbosa? Please state your name for the record when you start speaking, and you have 3 minutes. We will track it.
Perhaps Ms. Barbosa has stepped away. We can move to our second speaker.
Okay?
Ms. Sutar?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, my husband also turned in filled out the thing to speak, so he'll be able to speak also, correct?
I do not see your husband online.
Yeah, we registered him. I don't know if
Yeah, the computer, my computer that
is down right now, so we're having to use the
Oh,
computer.
okay, so you're in the same location. That's fine. We
Yeah,
can do
that's
one at a
fine.
time.
Okay, beautiful. All
Go
right, thank you so
sequentially,
much.
yeah.
I appreciate that. All right, Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Peggy Sutar. I am a UCSB and SBC graduate. I've been in Isla Vista for 42 years. I also served 20 years as an elected official for the Isla Vista Recreation Parks District. I've worked to build community and tried my best to make this a safer place to live. One of Isla Vista's biggest challenges is parking, and lack of parking becomes a health and safety issue when residents are parking in red zones, on corners, in front of driveways, and on sidewalks. Visibility becomes difficult for cars to see pedestrians and bicycles. This proposed development has 48 bedrooms, which means at least 96 tenants. If they double occupancy, although we do know in Isla Vista, many bedrooms have 3 people living in them because of the price of rent. With only 24 parking places being provided, that's possibly 72 cars that will need a place to park. According to the parking study completed by the CSD, we are already over 100% capacity. The CSD is in the process of implementing this plan. It is unfortunate that the county is looking at approving this and many more developments in Isla Vista without the CSD understanding the full scope of all of the additional cars that will be without a space to park in IB. Other concerns I have with this development is its height and density. It's completely incompatible with the neighborhood. I understand because of the new state laws, the developers are receiving concessions, usually height, parking, density, or setbacks. We all understand we need more housing, particularly low and moderate income, and that these state laws supersede our own zoning laws. But is there a way for our local officials to allow for the concessions, but have some discretion to moderate this growth at a level that is not a detriment to the health and safety of our community? Isla Vista is already incredibly impacted Please take a moment and think about the impact that this and all the other developments in the pipeline being proposed, and imagine what that impact is going to have on our community. It would be really useful to have a comprehensive plan that really looks at all the different developments that are going to happen and the impacts that they will have. If you are not able to downsize this project today, please send this project to the Board of Architectural Review. Install the story poles. The story poles would help build awareness in community so that they really understand the impacts these buildings are going to have on their neighborhood. Everyone is telling me that their hands are tied, but please find a way to follow state law, but do it in a manner that the impact to our neighborhood does not cause irreparable harm. Because in the end, who is going to be responsible for these impacts on us because of the state density law, builder's remedy, and AB 2097? I really thank you for all of your great comments and questions. I'd like to know if this parking is going to cost money. And I would also say that this is a completely different zoning in this area than all the other 3-story buildings. Anyways, thank you for your time, service, and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Sutter. And Ms.
Mr. Sutar, I also have brought up the photos that you
Yeah.
that were
Oh,
sent
thank
over. Just let me when you want me to toggle from one to the other on those.
And Mr.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Sutar, will you remind us of your first name?
John, Jon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, commissioners, for listening. First, I would like to say that I'm not against development, and I realize the need for housing. The slow growth in Santa Barbara and statewide has led to a shortage. Yet I would not call it a crisis. Santa Barbara may have been what did I write here? Had a slow growth, but I can say that in IV that in our area we've had a lot of growth over the years, and the area around it has had some substantial growth. And that growth. Oh yeah, there's that picture. I was just wanted to show you that that telephone pole there is the height of the construction. And I would like anyone to just go out and stand 10 feet from that telephone pole and look up, because that's what we will get in our neighborhood and in my backyard. I would like to say that 50 years of concessions in Isla Vista have led to a long list of problems associated with this density. So far, the only mitigation seems to have been traffic lights and studies. Let's see where I'm at on this. I understand that it's necessary to build housing, but there should be no reason why these concessions should be regulated within a reasonable tolerance of detrimental impacts to the community. The impacts water, trash, sewage, parking. And I'd like to say too that in the 40 years that I've lived here, transit has not really improved. So I don't see how that is such a big concession for allowing these projects to be so big. And I also like to say that all the project that you're looking at these projects individually, but if you put them all together, the impacts are unsustainable. What else did I write here? Sorry, I'm not very good at the public comment. My wife is much better. What's that? Oh yeah. So anyways, I would like to thank you for doing at least listening, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Sutar. Do we have another speaker? Ms. Barbosa.
Let's return to Julia Barbosa. Ms. Barbosa, if you could unmute yourself. There you go. Ms. Barbosa, whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I will read the comment that I submitted for the files. My name is Julia Barbosa, and I'm an Isla Vista resident. A few weeks ago, I had to run an urgent errand around 11:30 p.m., but could not exit my property because my driveway was completely blocked by an illegally parked car. The proceedings to get the car towed with the assistance of CHP took over an hour, at which point the driver, who had been parking blocks away, came to collect his vehicle at nearly 1 a.m. If you have young children like I do, being blocked from exiting your property in case of an emergency could be a serious concern. This was not an isolated event. I have had to tow away several vehicles blocking my driveway, despite the unequivocally clear sign posted that all illegally parked vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. Nearly every day that I drive on Camino Corto, there are multiple cars sticking out of corners, parked in the red zones, blocking sideway access ramps and fire hydrants. Drivers are not able to see oncoming foot, car, or bike traffic. Service and utility vehicles are then forced to double park because red zones are not available, compounding the traffic hazard with college students zigzagging on bikes and scooters. Adding three-story buildings at 6737 Sueño will not only be aesthetically oppressive and out of character with the neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood, but it will add a large number of cars to an already desperate situation on the streets of Isla Vista. Isla Vista simply does not have the infrastructure, not to mention law enforcement, to support this level of growth at this juncture. I understand that there is a state mandate forcing the county to add housing in the area. On the other hand, the state has also implemented daylighting law AB 413 that is not even currently being enforced in Isla Vista. When you add this imminent loss of parking spaces to the proposed addition of 6737 Sueño, that will potentially add 100+ cars to the streets of Isla Vista, and it is a recipe for disaster. It is a matter of time before the chaos in Isla Vista, in the streets of Isla Vista, produces a serious accident. Local residents have been thoroughly documenting this crisis, and if the county deliberately proceeds with the addition of high-density housing without infrastructure support, it will be doing so despite knowing the harm it will cause. I urge the commission to please deny this development or scale it back significantly for the health and the safety of Isla Vista. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barbosa. Is there anyone else online?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Barbosa, hang on. Don't hang up. Commissioner Park.
Ms. Barbosa, this is a really easy question, I think.
Yes.
So you signed the letter that's signed by various other people as well?
I did not.
Oh, you did not sign that? Okay, you submitted your own letter?
Correct.
I see. Do you know those people that signed that letter where there's, I don't know how many it is?
I know all of them.
Okay, do they live in Isla Vista?
Yes, they do.
Okay, that's, the reason I wondered that is sometimes we'll get letters about a particular area and then we find out the people live 300 miles away. And here the letter didn't say that everybody who signed it was a resident, and that's why I just wanted to find out.
I know
Thanks.
all of them personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. I think if we don't have anyone else online, that would close our public hearing and bring it back to staff. If you did, staff want to comment on anything raised during public hearing?
Thank you, Chair Bradley. I did check in with the building official on Commissioner Martinez's question. The building code does not have an occupancy limit. If a house becomes a substandard condition per the California Health and Safety Code, and the building department is notified, then they go in and do an inspection and may red flag it or affect occupancy, but there is no limit. Then I checked in with the fire department. They have one person per 50 square feet. So you're looking at, if the biggest bedroom is 178 square feet, then you're looking at a maximum of 3 people in that bedroom.
Thank you. That's really interesting. The conferral.
So, Madam Chair, just throw more numbers at you. The baseline for design for plan check review in the building code is 1 per 200 square feet. So the fire code is going to be a little bit different parameters, but when we're looking at the design of a unit or structure, it's 1 per 200 square feet is the starting point. But that's just design, that's not an occupancy load. That's just how we're designing it.
Okay, because it could go more than 1 per 200.
Yeah, they could propose what their occupancy is, and we'd evaluate it based on that, but there is no limitation on occupancy in the building code.
Okay, so how did that translate to the 96 residents that we had in the staff report? Ms. Volpe?
Madam Chair, the parking those are just parking standards. They're not actually talking about the amount of people in the bedroom. They're just standards that we associate per bedroom for that area. But we're not actually commenting on how many people are staying in a bedroom.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Martinez, do you have a question from staff or?
Oh, no.
Okay. Commissioner Park?
I wanted to add a little bit of information in response to Commissioner Martinez's question and then ask a different question. You may be aware there's a very famous California Supreme Court decision that arose out of the city of Santa Barbara relating to trying to regulate occupancy of unrelated persons. And that sort of is in the background for everything when you ask about this. Okay, so my question. The SR-M zoning, and I forgot what that SR-M means, but whatever, you'll tell me. Do you have a graphic that you can quickly put up that shows how prevalent that zoning is in Isla Vista? It will relate to some of my thoughts about the impact of 2097, because if it's relatively restricted and this just happens to fall into it, that's one thing. If all of Isla Vista is subject to SR-M, well, there's other consequences. Thanks.
Commissioner Park, through the chair, it's what it is. It's student residential medium density, and I do have my first slide. I don't think I have control. Should demonstrate that area and can show the SRM, but it's not the whole Isla Vista area. If you did want to see that, it would take another minute to pull up, but.
And I do want to point out, while we're getting the slide up, that, and maybe the agent didn't brag about it enough, but, this is right next to a nice little pocket park, and across the street, there's a rec zone park as well. So he's got good green space near the project site.
Right, so here we can see basically where you see the green 6337, that whole area below is SRM zoning, and then there's that little area of rec kind of up through as you go up north, and then there's even higher density SRH is student residential high density is up to the right.
Since you've got your slides up, I think it's your next slide or soon after that is the one that shows the 2097 radius. There you go. Mm-hmm. And there it appears that on your left-hand figure, there's two green discs there. One, we see just the edge of it, and that arises out of another bus station or something.
Commissioner Park, yes, that is correct. As you can see, there are multiple transit stops in that area, and the little area on the right is the location of yet another half-mile transit stop, which is outside of this location, but would be for the houses over there.
Now, there's nothing on this slide that shows the prevalence of the SRM or H zoning, right? Oh, you do have something. Is that right there?
I think we have the layer. This is it.
So it looks like here we can see the SRM zoning.
It's all like yellow, right? For us challenged readers.
So Madam Chair and Commissioners, just to walk through the image on the screen, you see the SRM 18 zone right there.
Right.
The red dotted lines is the outlines of where that zoning is. And so you see there's also the SRM 18 up here, as well as there's an SRH 20 above here.
So most of
This is
Isla
showing
Vista is in
This is
this.
showing the Isla Vista zoning designations. So which layer are you looking for? So I'm not using your map. So what map are you guys looking for? So Madam Chair and Commissioners, we selected the layer that has the transit stops per AB 2097. And that's what's being highlighted with these symbols with the bus. And then just below it is the half-mile buffer of qualifying transit stops. So when you turn that layer on, you're seeing that half-mile designation.
Handy.
I'm just going to make a comment because it's there, although this is admittedly out of order.
That's okay.
Uh,
Well, I think we're in deliberations.
Okay, well then, sort of it's in order then. My comment is this, that the zoning allows a project like this darn near everywhere in Isla Vista. And that's not Mr. Roy's fault, Mr. St. George's, it's just the way it is. And the 2097 benefits of no parking are most of Isla Vista. And that means to me that this project is a harbinger of other projects that will be in Isla Vista, where people would say, under 2097, I don't need any parking, so maybe I'll take in the parking I already have and apply for more buildings on it. And if you think that Isla Vista is kind of sweet with its single-family residences and all that, well, guess what? They'll all get projects like this with this kind of density, bonus densities, and none of them will have any parking. And the people in Santa Barbara will say, gee, we always heard for decades how Isla Vista is one of those densely populated places in America. And what we've managed to do is watch it become much worse with state law, and that's a challenge. I know I'm going to get calls and get in trouble about this. That's a challenge for our Board of Supervisors to see how Isla Vista can stay as a tolerable community as these state mandates are enforced.
Thank you, Commissioner Park. I failed to acknowledge the applicant if you wanted to have rebuttal time after public comment. You have a couple minutes. You can add any information, but if you don't have to. All right, thank you. Okay, well then we are back at deliberation. So that started us out with Commissioner Park's comments. Commissioner Martinez?
You know, well, not you know, but I mean, one can't reflect on the realities of what this is going to bring. And I looked up the AB 2097, and indeed, even in the legislative comments, I mean, this is what I would call mandatory legislation on an ideal with no sense of reality. I mean, because basically it says it in there that, no, we don't want people to buy cars. We know it's going to have an effect upon driving, and people aren't going to have cars, and therefore we're going to force the mass transportation. And that's an ideal. And I think we're seeing the negative effects upon the surrounding neighborhood, and I've seen it before, and I think we've all know what it looks like. And I'm just trying to figure out a way of how we up here on the Planning Commission are so handcuffed with these legislations, which are just saying, you shall do this. And those are my comments because I feel handcuffed. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed.
Okay. Yeah, as residents of Santa Maria, I know I can, and I think Commissioner Vince would agree with me. We have seen the effects, actually starting with that Supreme Court case that Commissioner Park had mentioned, eliminating any controls on unrelated adults living in a structure. We have seen the extreme adverse effects of uncontrolled parking. So I can certainly sympathize with everything I've heard from residents talking about over parking. Have a great deal of sympathy for that. I also certainly understand the need for more housing. And while this, the buildings in this look attractive, perhaps the fit is not the greatest. But, but in addition to that, due to these state mandates, we are very constrained as to any actions we might take in response to the many, many comments we have seen. So I am left without any solutions to propose in terms of action we might take to oppose or modify the approval of this development. About the only thing I could leave you with, and it will be of no assistance in this particular case, is that since these are state mandates, perhaps residents need to more carefully consider who they are selecting to send to the state legislature, to the Assembly and the State Senate on their behalfs, because that is where these sorts of initiatives that they so often find distasteful have come from, and certainly will come from in the future. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Did you have any comments now? I'll go when everyone's done.
Well, since it is deliberations, I can exhale some frustration that all my fellow commissioners have voiced very well. My last time living in multifamily housing was in Isla Vista in the 60s, and I have to say the quality of the building was the biggest problem we had at that point. Yet Isla Vista in the interim has become one of the very few affordable areas in Santa Barbara County, and I can't oppose the concept of trying to create more housing opportunities, no matter where, and find a place for people who are currently living here or otherwise would have to leave the county, perhaps leave the state. And so I'm trying to accept this as a fact, and will keep my eyes and ears open to the maximum we can possibly do under state law without going over the line and making it worse for everybody. So with those comments, I'm prepared to vote in favor of this project. I don't think it's a waste of anybody's time or money, but the developer has the control and seems sensitive to the needs of the future residents, which I hope we hear about if that's not the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. So again, I'm operating on 2.5 hours sleep because I really did not sleep over this case. This was very difficult for me, and I really appreciate staff walking me through it. The neighbors in this area are really tired of hearing our hands are tied. I'm tired of saying it, but that is the fact that we face. There are things that might help the community here move along, and this is the first of 5 hearings this applicant has. I'm going to ask if he'd be willing to go to the SBAR for some conceptual feedback to get some of this neighborhood input out in public. The last time you were here with the Hollister Avenue case, you had a conference in the foyer with neighbors, and you resolved an issue regarding drainage on that case. And those 8 neighbors came back in and said, yeah, we're okay with that, even though they too were looking at a fairly major dense project on their underdeveloped lot. So I'm going to ask you if you'd be willing to go to SBAR for just 1 hearing and then come back to us, and then that still leaves you with 2 hearings if it's appealed. So that's a question before I go further with any other deliberations.
I'd have to check with the owner before I could answer that question. I would say they're pretty motivated to move this along, mostly for water purposes, because Goleta Water only has a certain amount of allocations, and we need the entitlement approval for us to apply for those water allocations. So that's their motivating factor, kind of move this along as quickly as possible. But I can give them a call right now and see.
That would be great. Because in my conversations, I mentioned that I talked to Kaylee Grubb, who's the chair of SBAR, and she's equally frustrated with the fact that right now, when we have these objective design standards applicable in the coastal zone, and you come back to us in a couple months with the next case like this, I'm hoping that you will have something in the staff report that says, we looked at this I thought that the department was going to be hiring a paid architect to help you go through these plans. Because right now, we're looking at this, we're acting like the SBAR, and we don't even have an architect making sure that this actually fits in or meets any sort of design standards. I appreciate staff's doing the best they can, but we need help. And now SBAR has obliterated the awareness of the neighborhood in knowing that this case is coming forward. The mail notices happen, but they are probably tossed out by people in the neighborhood. With the SBAR, there would actually be either a secondary notice, and I know we won't have time in this case for them to ask for story polls and then come back. We don't have that number of hearings. But when Mr. Roy was here before on the Hollister Avenue case, I specifically said, I have to rely on you as the applicant to be a good developer and reach out to the neighbors. It's the fundamental thing that any agent should do. So it's a strong request and it's a strong encouragement because my vote is kind of tied to your answer. I want to be really clear about that. If we want to take a break, I'm not sure that there's anything more I can comment on in deliberations. The rest of what I was going to say, we'll go to a break, is that this case does, thank you for providing the parking. Our code is deficient already. Our code is deficient already in the number of parking spaces. And everybody thinks that, oh, well, it's Isla Vista, so everybody walks to campus. That is not the point. And it's why the Ivy Park Recreation District documented a 106% saturation rate out there. It's because students come, they find a house, and they still have a car because they have to go to Trader Joe's on the weekends or they have to go back to Orange County or San Francisco to their house. They bring cars. So there's too many cars. Now, the county, I know, is going to try to be doing some stuff for infrastructure planning and to, get ahead of this. It's something we should have been doing for many years, but I know the Second District is having community meetings, and I think it's within the next month. So, yay, finally, we're trying to get ahead of it, and that might help all of us when we're looking at these cases as they trickle in. Third, I know we need the housing. I want to support this housing project, but I'm really having a problem with development plan findings that I absolutely cannot make. And then being told that my hands are tied and I have to approve it anyway. So you could do a good job here by having this go to SBAR, give it one flush through, they may scream and yell and everything, but at least it's a chance for them to take a look at it and for you to understand if there's anything you can do to adjust it, and it's just one hearing. You can get on their agenda and move ahead. I understand the timing to get to Goleta Water. I've heard it from dozens of other applicants. So Mr. St. George is a skilled developer and he knows what it takes. You should always, when you go to SBAR, if you do, brag about the open space that you are near. I mean, you are really well situated between parks across the street and next to it, so even though your site doesn't have a lot of green space, and I remember your case on Hollister had the concession of accounting for our 40% development plan open yard area as being the landscaping required. So you got that concession approved. In this case, I don't have anxiety about not having much open space on your site because you're next to 2 parks. But guess what? Those parks bring people, and I saw when I was doing my site visit, 4 people came and parked. And then one of them blocked a driveway across the street. I blocked a driveway across the street because I'm trying to run around these blocks. And I came back and the tail of my car was halfway through. And she goes, I got to get out of here. Is this your car? You got to move it. So it's a real problem. And I think the county needs to, take some leadership. And I know the Second District is trying to do this with the community to talk about infrastructure planning. And there are, I intend to get more involved with it than I've been in the past because this isn't going away. So other than that, in terms of the deliberation comments, I don't really have any other concerns. I think I'm not impressed with the architecture. I think it's institutional and ugly, and I wish it could have been more creative. But I hope that you get some feedback from SBAR, and if they think it's fine for the setting that you're in, then I would defer to them. Because you have to understand that this planning commission we're not architects, and we have for decades relied on SBAR feedback into us, and we can hold steady on that. And so when you come to us with nothing, we're kind of flying blind, but we're trying to do the best we can. So I have a feeling that's probably it. Talk about the parks. Let's take a break, and you can check with your client.
Can I make my comments?
Yeah. I thought you already did your comments, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to make them now, just because I want to make them. And also, it might help Mr. Roy in addressing our chair's question. I'm glad you brought up the lack of ABR involvement, because when I first looked at the plans here, I thought, what did the ABR say about all this? And then I read everything more carefully and realized the ABR was not involved at all. And that concerns me generally because, like I said, I do see this as a harbinger of multiple other projects all throughout Isla Vista, and they won't receive any architectural board review. I looked at Isla Vista a lot in the past, 1, because I lived there, 2, because it used to be in my district, 3, because in the evolution of the recreational master plan, we looked a lot at Isla Vista and how buildings were built. 4, I spent a lot of time talking with a gentleman who works for the county in a high position who used to be a planner for the Parks District out there and also for the redevelopment district. And so he's informed me of how the buildings arose on the loop. And so when I think of my vision of Isla Vista, it's not what I see now and have known since I was a kid, which reminds me of Camp Roberts, that you see in the National Guard Reserve area off the side of 101 as you go north. Just this slew of low-slung buildings. When I go into the Loop area, there's a lot of green space, and the reason there's a lot of green space is they've gone up. Those are 4-story buildings, and they have some very distinctive, unusual, whimsical architecture. I mean, it's real architecture. And they have commercial below and parking, and then they go up. And to me, that's a better vision overall for Isla Vista than trying to copy the mid-20th century architecture and have more of it. I cannot make the finding that's been put before us by staff that the project will not be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the neighborhood and will not be incompatible with the surrounding area. It is incompatible with the surrounding area in many different ways, and in particular, not the only thing, but in particular, the parking impact will create by not having sufficient parking for all the people that will live there. Now, how do I reconcile this with the state mandates? That's why I asked the questions about 2097. It does not appear to take away our discretion to say no to a project. It just says we can't add parking spaces, okay? And I look at SB 330, and it says that we can deny a project or reduce density if we can point to a specific adverse impact on the public safety or health. And excuse me for paraphrasing, but that's the best I can do. And I don't think I can support the project, and what I would favor doing is continuing this matter for preparation of findings for denial. And those findings for denial would, of course, have to be specific and could not relate to this general finding for approval about not being detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, and not being incompatible. And I think those specific findings that we could make are that there is objective information that relates to how many people will occupy that statistically, what the probabilities are, what number of cars they will have, and the fact those cars will have to be parked all over that neighborhood. And I'm not so concerned about what the traffic engineers would say about trips through the neighborhood and all that, because I've become kind of skeptical about that stuff. But I do know from just parking there, even just recently, that it's very hard to find parking spaces, and people park all over, and it's very tricky looking for pedestrians and bicyclists and skateboarders who are all over Isla Vista when you've got these cars parked all over there. That's why I think it affects the public safety. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. Why don't can we just take a 5-minute break so the applicant can check with his owner? Because I don't really want to deny this, but I want to have better feedback from SBAR. I want to have better output with the neighborhood. Especially, I mean, the term harbinger was perfect, Commissioner Park, because when we look at that zoning map and all of those SR 18, housing zones could come in with something like this, I think it's incumbent on the county to lead the way in terms of infrastructure assistance. But right now, we're caught between two hard places, and I couldn't disagree with you at all. So putting a Band-Aid on it might be going to SBAR and getting some more feedback and then coming back to us. And maybe there's an adjustment here or there. At least you would have vetted it with the neighbors, and that is a meaningful thing to do because our hands are tied. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to get yelled at for that too. So can we take a 10-minute break and come back? And I think we can finish pretty quickly after that. Thank you, everyone. We're returning to the February 26th County Planning Commission agenda. And we took a break so that our applicant could talk to his owner about a voluntary stop at the S-Bar. Did you want to report that at the mic? Mr. Roy?
Yes, so I was able to speak with the owner, and we are willing to voluntarily go before SBAR, hear their comments, hear the public's comments, make any changes, and then come back before your commission.
Okay, great. So let's hear from staff about the timing on that. Did you look at,
So, Madam Chair and Commissioners, yeah, we need to look at the timing. I was just speaking with Mr. Villalobos. So I think the next SBAR that we could make feasibly would be the end of March. I think the next one's like next week, but we can't make that one because of noticing.
right?
So then I think we're looking at the end of March, like the 21st. And so then we'd have to look at a planning commission date. I guess we could go April 2nd since we were looking at adding more items on that agenda date anyway.
Good.
So
So that would be in my motion, correct?
I think we need the applicant to just nod his head or say yes
confirm
on
the
the mic.
March 21st and the April 2nd continuation at the PC.
Yes, that works for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so before I make this motion, I want to reiterate that I would like to approve this project. I rely on that SBAR touch. I understand that they will be equally hamstrung as we feel, but at least we will have their feedback and the neighbors will have a chance to look at the plans and understand them better than maybe they do today. So I appreciate the applicant's willingness to fit that into the schedule. I know it's really urgent with Goleta Water, but my intention would be after that SBAR meeting and we get some feedback from them, that I would want to move to approve this case. Given all of the craziness and all of the hamstring, things that we have, that would be my intention, but I really want that public output. So with that, I will make a motion today to continue the item to the April 2nd agenda so that the applicant can go to the SBAR meeting on March 21st and get some conceptual comments. That's it. That's my motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, do we have discussion on that? I'm not seeing anything, so we can vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Park?
I think it's a splendid and creative idea, so thank you.
Commissioner Gooney,
Aye.
Commissioner Park,
Aye?
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Chair Bradley.
Aye,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roy. That concludes our meeting, and we are adjourned until, we're just rolling along with all these dates until March 5.
Okay, so before everyone leaves,
Yes,
do you have your packet for next week? It's really small.
we notice. Little tiny thing.
It's like a 2-page agenda and a 2-page memo.
Yeah.